Ever since the 80s, video games have grown to become an incredibly popular pastime, as well as a major sector of the entertainment industry. Between smartphones, PCs, and consoles, hardly anyone hasn't picked up a video game at this point. I myself have strong ties to this industry between my childhood love for the medium, my time in high school spent participating in game development competitions, and my interest in going into the game development industry once I graduate college. The rise of video games into the modern sphere of entertainment is a short yet fascinating journey. Today I would like to walk you through the history behind their inception, rise to popularity, and the state of the industry today. It all began in 1958 at Brookhaven National Laboratory, when a physicist who formerly worked on the Manhattan Project got the idea to create something a little interesting for the laboratory's annual exhibit. According to the article, the first video game on Brookhaven's official website, bnl.gov, William Higginbotham created the first video game, titled Tennis for Two, when he wanted to create a more interactive experience for exhibit goers. The game was ran on a small analog computer and displayed by creating curves on the cathode ray tubes of an oscilloscope. Gameplay consisted of two players bouncing a ball back and forth on a tennis court and trying to prevent the other player from making it in. This back and forth simple gameplay may sound familiar to some, as it is the concept behind what many recognize as the first commercial video game, Pong. Despite how early it sounds that this game was created, video games didn't actually become a commercial industry until several decades later. The 80s emergence of arcades and home consoles is what really began the commercial push. According to the 1996 book, The Complete History of Computer and Video Games by Paul Glancy, arcade machines began to hit the scene in 1982 and brought with them iconic titles such as Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Pole Position, just to name a few. Within a year later, the US arcade industry alone had amassed over $5 billion in profits. And over the sea in Japan, the government actually had to order to have more 100-yen coins minted to keep up with the amount that people were plopping into machines. This mania only erupted further when companies such as Nintendo, Atari, and Sega began developing home consoles. At first, the games developed for home consoles weren't particularly different from their arcade predecessors, but as time went on, developers began to create these games with a more long-term experience in mind and began to combine them with overarching stories, which arcade machines simply couldn't offer players at the time. As time marched on and more competitors entered the mix, such as Sega, the gaming scene of the mid-90s began to shift away from the simple 2D graphics that it had emerged from and move towards more groundbreaking 3D visuals. Although at this point storylines and intricate visuals were becoming a norm, nobody from the 90s could begin to even imagine how above and beyond the developers of today have gone. Today, the gaming industry is a billion-dollar industry employing many programmers and creatives. According to a 2020 article published on techjury.net, How Much is the Gaming Industry Worth in 2020, by Teodora Dobrylova, the gaming industry is forecasted to be worth as much as $256.97 billion in 2025. This steep number isn't exactly a surprise when you consider the fact that video games are available widely on borderline any tech available. Combine this with the undeniable quality increase that they've had over the years, and it's not hard to see why more and more people are flocking to video games as a form of entertainment. Video games also used to only employ about a few programmers, graphic designers, and musicians for the process. However, today, a single video game can have dozens of professional writers, directors, musicians, and visual artists working on it. The amount of jobs and money that it brings in makes it a competitive entertainment industry compared to others. It is not hard to see that the video game industry, despite its short history, is incredibly fascinating and well-lived. The video games of today are built upon the decades of work that others have done, and in the decades coming, video games will undeniably increase in quality. Perhaps as time goes on, in 10 years or 20, we can look back on the video games of today and think about how far the technology and design process has improved.